Okay, let's start the show.
For Thursday, August 9th, 2018. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Space, the final frontier. The
Hello, welcome to the podcast. That was our intro music. You know, last week, was it last week? We talked about, I asked if it would be possible to get the sheet music for our intro theme song.
Right.
And I forgot who had composed it for us. One of you out there, one of you listeners. And the guy who composed it reached out, Mark Scissors, reached out and said he would work on it.
He'd work on producing the sheet music.
Yeah, he did the pop culture intro music. And he'd want to do that as the sheet music. And if he does, I would totally find a keyboard and play it.
Okay.
One of these days.
Great.
Yeah. How are you guys doing?
Fine.
Excellent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yep.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything fun this past weekend? You guys do anything fun?
Oh my gosh. Well, we tried to beat the Borg a couple times over the past week.
Oh my God.
It turns out it's futile.
We found the best VR games, and we'll talk a lot about this when we get to the VR minute, are the ones where we're all playing together. We had not got together to play VR since Rec Room, since the Pirate Quest. And for the past couple days, we've been trying to get through the Bridge Crew Borg mission. And it's really the value of that game is it's the multiplayer aspect.
I don't know. Did you watch Infinity War again?
Sure. Is it a Tuesday? Yeah. I'll watch it.
All right.
My parents got their Model 3.
No.
Yeah, they did.
Are they happy?
I'm gonna say this. I love the car. I think it's an amazing piece of technology.
Uh-oh.
I'm very happy with it. Having to teach my parents the technology of the Model 3 has almost diminished my enjoyment of the Model 3.
How to program the VCR.
Yeah.
How many times do they call you and be like, why is this thing happening with
I
my
have been
mom?
called 5 times in the past 2 days about car, like not understanding something in the car. How do I unplug the charge port?
Is there a summon Norm button in the Tesla app?
That's in a future version, future app update. Why can't I do I have to turn the car off?
That's interesting. So does more technology make it simpler or more complex?
Way more complicated. The driving aspect, they're like, it's fun to drive and it's very fast, and they don't like the regenerative braking. They didn't realize that when the regenerative braking kicks on, the brake lights kick on. They're worried about tailgaters hitting them when because it stops pretty hard. It changed the way you drive a little bit.
Valid concern.
And then so I said you could flip on the creep mode. You can have low regenerative braking. You can make it feel like an ICE.
Yeah.
And okay, it'll take a little bit for them to get used to it, but I think they are freaked out by the single screen.
This is fascinating because this is an example of somebody who bought a Model 3 who apparently didn't do any research.
Yeah.
They heard it was cool.
And I'm sure there are many people out there, maybe not in our generation, maybe not, younger people who are looking to buy a fancy new electric car, but there are many people in there, maybe 50s and 60s, who got the car because they heard, maybe their friends have one, maybe they heard it was, they want to save the money on the gas.
But they weren't following every news bite and Elon on Twitter and the Tesla forums.
Nothing. They just bought it. And this is the thing that most, this is mainstream, not just America, but the world, right? People are used to driving old cars.
Yeah.
And cars with buttons for radio. They didn't know how to turn on radio. They didn't know. They don't care about streaming music. They don't care about podcasts. Mm-hmm. They just wanted their local radio, and it's not there in this car.
There's no tactile.
There's
buttons
no
at all.
no buttons at all. How do I?
Hazard lights. That's a tactile.
That is the only government required. They took it on a trip the very first day. They got it on a Sunday morning. They took it on a 50-mile drive to an event, and I got a call from my dad. It's like, I want to take a nap in this car. How do I turn it off?
What?
Like, my mom's going shopping or something, and
okay.
he just wants to roll down the windows and take a nap in the car.
How do I turn it off?
And how does he turn off the screen? How can I turn off the AC and turn off the screen?
That's
and
a
save
good
power?
car to nap in too, because
And
the
I'm
seats
like-
go flat.
And I'm like, you don't need to turn it off. Just that screen is not taking that much power. You don't
Oh, yeah.
like if you're in a old car where you have a 12-volt battery, you don't want to leave the radio on with the car parked and the AC blasting because you'll drain your battery. Here, you could leave it on for 3 days and it'd be no problem.
Well, it does have a 12-volt battery, right?
It does,
And
which
it-
it charges, but it uses the main battery
To
for
charge the 12-volt. And as long as the car is like actually on,
Yeah.
that 12-volt is being charged.
So or always
you don't
being
have to be
charged.
driving.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like little things like this, and it really, you're right. That now that you mention it, it was interesting because this is a completely different class of customer
Then
that-
I'm used to talking to.
that any of us are used to talking to. Really, and probably you out there are not members of, but maybe know people in that space. Like it's the same problem that we had with iPhones, and smartphones 10 years ago. What is this fancy new device? And the same kind of tech support we're gonna have to provide for electric cars.
The stories of the next generation.
Top story this week.
All right, as alluded to in our opening musical segment, what a wonderful day. Let's relive the moment. This was Saturday, I believe. Saturday at around like 2 p.m. Around 1:30 p.m. or
Pacific,
so.
yeah.
Pacific time. We were all going about our weekends. I got a text message from Gary Whitta saying, well, I guess I have to subscribe to Star Trek Discovery or subscribe to CBS All Access now. I'm like, what do you mean? What's going on? And I was like walking in the Richmond district. I need to find internet reception. What's going on? Twitter, tell me what's going on. Twitter didn't even have it trending yet. Mm-hmm. And I had this feeling I need to check the news from Star Trek Las Vegas.
Yeah.
This past weekend, the annual Star Trek Vegas convention, which is a funny place to have a Star Trek convention. But if you think about the history of Star Trek, the Star Trek The Experience was for the longest time in Las Vegas. So the annual convention is in Vegas. Mm-hmm. The big announcement, Alex Kurtzman went on stage and as a surprise guest brought to the front of the stage one Sir Patrick Stewart, who told a 10-minute story about a very typical convention story about his life, how Star Trek changed his life, and what it was like when he first auditioned for the role of Jean-Luc Picard, and then at the very end, dropped the bomb. Jean-Luc is back.
Boom.
Jean-Luc is back,
I love,
everyone.
I love that you know where you were when you found out. I think we all have a story like that. Everyone will have that story.
Yes.
Where were you?
Where were you when you found out?
Picard was coming back. It was announced.
I got a message from a friend that was at Star Trek Las Vegas. Like, there was apparently like a buzz through the crowd that Patrick Stewart was there to make an announcement of some kind. So I don't know how they found out beforehand. But when you watch some of the videos of him coming out on stage, you can hear people be like, it's got to be Patrick Stewart. It's got to be Patrick Stewart. So they like knew something big was about to happen.
We're, of course, talking about the news that was dropped that CBS All Access, the service which produces Star Trek Discovery, has signed a deal to create some type of new series with Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard in the Next Generation universe, set 20 years later after the finale of Next Generation. And no script has been written. They've had meetings about it. They say it will play true to the character. They haven't talked about any other appearances for other cast members, what the story will be about, whether he'll be a captain. But it will be set 20 years later, even though it is 25 years later since the finale. Think about that.
Interesting.
When we were growing up and we played Star Trek, remember one of the best PC games ever made was 25th Anniversary Star Trek? It was an adventure game.
Yeah.
The original series.
Yeah.
That was like in the late 90s. Now we're 25 years past the finale of Next Generation.
Yeah, they're careful not to call it a reboot. right?
No,
it's
because
a
it's not.
continuation. The journey, the ongoing missions.
Shouldn't he be an ambassador? So I will say, I immediately went and watched the last episode of TNG after this announcement. And he, like, just because, like, you know, he warps to the future in that episode. And you see...
Q puts in a version of him in the future in which he has a degenerative neurological disease.
Yeah, uriatic syndrome. Urimatic syndrome. Whatever. And he had been an ambassador in that situation. Yes. So I'm wondering if we get Ambassador Picard.
So let's speculate. And we're going to talk about Next Generation and do a lot of speculating over the next 10, 15 minutes. One, this was something that was rumored, you know, a few weeks ago, almost a month ago. I think we had talked about it on the podcast even. And back then, did you believe this was something that could happen? We all wanted it to happen. But let's be honest here. Did you think it was something that was going to happen?
I thought it was going to be like some, like,
a cameo appearance?
Cameo, like not a starring role.
I did not think it was a sure thing by any stretch.
Yeah.
Because he's considerably older now, and I didn't know
he's 80 years
what
old.
They would do. Is he 80 years old?
Yeah.
So I didn't know what they would do, and I still don't. And I hesitate to even guess or speculate, because if they have the writing talent that I hope they will, they'll outsmart anything I can come up with.
78 years old. So I think they're taking the kind of HBO style of producing here, and where they're launching these series that don't necessarily have to be multi-season commitments. This could be a mini series, right? This could be 6 episodes, you know, that they signed him for. It could be more. It could be a full-blown series. But the fact that it's a Picard-centric series, one is telling. This is not the Next Generation.
Right.
The last time we saw the crew of Next Generation, last time we saw Jean-Luc Picard on screen in any capacity was in Star Trek Nemesis, which, as Next Generation fans know, that left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, right? We had the 2 kind of tepid Star Trek movies back to back to end the Next Generation, right? We had, out of the 4 movies they made, only one of them was good. Generations, First Contact, Insurrection.
Oh, Insurrection. Nemesis. I forgot about Insurrection.
Yeah.
I blocked that from my brain.
Right. And you can even say Insurrection was more the most like an episode of Star Trek, you know, a big budget episode, but not really the grand story. And then the kind of big grand story that they had with Nemesis was kind of flawed, even though, you know, but despite the best attempts by writer John Logan.
But Patrick Stewart went on to have an illustrious career.
Yes, as Professor X. But he talks about that in his thing, you know, the character of Picard is with him no matter where he goes. It is the thing that he is by far the most associated with. So what could compel him to come back? Like, if you're an actor and you've done Shakespeare, you've done comic book movies, you've done genre, you've done drama.
Yeah. He doesn't probably
he doesn't need it.
Doesn't need the paycheck.
So what was it that
they must have had story? They must have had story ideas.
Or was it the importance that because he talks about how the best thing to come out of Star Trek is how the stories from the fans, right, how it's changed their world, how Picard was their role model,
and it helped them through some difficult times.
Absolutely, and maybe out of a sense of like feeling like he needs the closure for that. The new life he can bring to Picard is the kind of uplifting.
I don't know. He was saying that at a fan convention. That's what you say at a fan convention.
I believe he's telling the truth. I believe he's being genuine.
He's being genuine, but I don't think that's why he took the part.
Oh, okay. Why do you think he took the part?
I think it's what you said. I think they must have pitched him a great storyline.
And the legacy of this character that he helped create and develop, he wants it to have that closure, and it's worth telling that story.
What do you want to see?
Oh, God.
So, okay. Let's talk about where is Picard 20 years from when we last saw him? He's not There's no way he's captain of the Enterprise.
Is he on a vineyard?
That's what a lot of people are saying. I don't think he's on a vineyard either.
Okay.
I think it's just like, and this is I'm sorry, I have Mission Impossible in mind. It's Ethan Hunt cannot retire. Picard cannot rest his laurels. I'm sure he maybe spent a year or 2 on the vineyard, right? Remember, the vineyard episode was after Best of Both Worlds Part 2, right? It was when he went back to Renee, his brother, and his nephew on the vineyard when he was recovering. That family died in the fire. In Generations, he breaks down.
My God,
there is no vineyard to go back to. So maybe he spent a year or 2 in the vineyard. Maybe he went back to the planet where Insurrection, where he promised Donna Murphy that he would go back and be with her. But I know the heart of Picard is to answer the unanswered questions, to be out there in the cosmos, to be tested by Q.
I don't think he's captain though.
No, he's definitely not captain. I would say that if they were writing the series, we will probably see a new Enterprise. I think it would be a great launching pad for them to introduce
The F.
What a new crew, a new captain.
Is he the Sean Connery to like someone else's Harrison Ford?
And maybe that's something. Maybe that's not the whole series, but that would be a great reveal or a great a great way to bring it forward. He shepherds the next generation.
Yeah,
and introduces them in his role as retired. It's like a retired astronaut, right? What does Chris Hadfield do? What is he doing now? Well, he's like, the constitution of his character doesn't change just because he's no longer in service.
My concern about this, and I hope that this is not necessary to have this, but I worry that the people who are in charge of Star Trek these days have a different motive than the people who ran Star Trek when he was in it. That Star Trek Discovery is maybe not the Star Trek that people turn to when they're at a down point in their lives,
right?
And they want to be uplifted.
It's more about Battlestar Galactica, more of a thrilling,
exactly,
tense show. But that's not with Alex Kurtzman, who is the biggest fan of Star Trek, and he's apparently is the one who convinced Patrick Stewart to come back.
This could differ from the whole
tone,
turn that
I think
it took since JJ took over?
I think the tone will be very different.
I don't think you mess around with a Picard character. I think they've learned their lesson from what has happened with. I mean, if you look at what's happened with Star Wars, about how people have been very upset at how the old characters have shifted and changed.
Now, that's something that I think that I was thinking about this earlier. I don't think we're going to get this Star Wars type feedback with Luke Skywalker, because what we have for the character of Jean-Luc Picard is we have 178 episodes of evidence to build a character on, right? Like, the people writing this new show can just go back to those 178 episodes and can the character is well defined.
Yeah, like they're never gonna make him not have a high moral compass.
Exactly. He's gonna ask for Earl Grey hot, right? Like these are things that are, and so what you're developing is the world really, and how he reacts to the world, the new world, and what might be different is the state of the Federation and the state of Starfleet and the state of the Alpha Quadrant 20 years later, which is something we haven't seen since the end of Nemesis. The last we saw of Star Trek, the furthest in the future we've gotten, is the end of Voyager. Right now, of course, we've had time travel episodes, we've had speculative, we have the Star Trek MMO, which has gone into a little bit further in the future, but that's not on-screen canon. That's canon to some extent. We've had the novels. Jean-Luc Picard had a huge post-Enterprise career in the novels, in the Shatner books, The Return, right, where he is, he's an ambassador and he is going undercover on missions. But if you look at the Next Generation, what were the things that were important to Picard, other than running the ship and keeping his crew safe and his family? The things that were important to him was, one, the Q relationship, right? Him as the beacon of humanity and proving humanity's worth and its place in the cosmos.
Although he would have been happy to be rid of that relationship.
Yeah, but that's just part of him now. I mean, that was the thing that bookended the show,
yes,
right? The responsibility given to him.
Do you think it's an inevitability that Q is in this new series?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, Sean Delancey's pretty old these days.
Who's not?
Right? Exactly. But I think that the lingering effects of that role could be an avenue they pursue.
Because he was one of the Q.
Right? Yeah. And it's just like the episode where Q gives Riker, the Q powers. Like, maybe the end game is Picard is offered a place in Q, and he turns it down. And what better an example of character of Picard than to turn down
immortality?
There was the Q kid too that episode.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. I mean, like, turning down mortality, his life coming to an end is kind of like one of the things. Like in Inner Light, he goes through all the human experience, a whole different type of human experience. I think space archaeology
for sure.
is 100%, and that gives the Indiana Jones, and there goes your Sean Connery, right, in Last Crusade, him unsolving the mysteries of where the origins of life.
Are he and Beverly Crusher married?
I don't think so.
Divorced.
Yeah, there
maybe,
you go.
maybe.
For all good things. Yeah, she's the captain of the ship. What are other things?
He's always struck me as professorial, so I kind of see. I mean, this tracks again to Indiana Jones, but this idea of him being a professor in some capacity.
I really
a teacher.
don't want to see him stuck in San Francisco in Starfleet Command, at Starfleet Academy.
But I think that'd be a good show.
I think it would be a good show. I don't need the I want it in space.
Yeah.
You need it at the Daystrom Institute.
Maybe it starts with him teaching in class at Starfleet
because
Academy.
he can't be the engine of the action if there's any action in this, because he's just too old to carry the weight.
So maybe
of
that's
that.
how you bring in the younger people. It's his students.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what I was thinking. Because that one Starfleet Academy show was episode was
yeah.
pretty good. It was pretty good, even though it had nothing to do with Picard or the guys on the Enterprise.
Are you talking about
Except
an
for
opportunity to bring Wesley back?
Wesley, I would love to see Wesley back.
He would be a right age.
Rewatching the series, that whole arc was not as bad as I remembered.
No, he's great. I think actually he develops the most. Their relationship develops the most because they pegged it as one thing: the plucky kid knowing the bitter captain,
who hates kids.
Who hates kids, exactly. And then they have this last episode where they're stuck in the cave together, and
I thought it was a little forced, to be honest. But you're right.
So there's two races he always had a special relationship with: the Klingons and his sort of ambassador role. But I feel like the Klingons.
But that's in the aftermath of Kittimer, which
Yeah.
was the lingering after effects of the original series.
But I think that story is unlikely given Discovery focusing on Klingons.
Yeah.
And then his foil was really the Romulans.
And I think
And that's
when I was
where
thinking,
I love
that's what I
him.
really wanted, because the legacy of Picard is carrying on the legacy of Spock.
Yeah.
And in Unification, he was the Avatar, right? Spock and Sarek both failed in unifying the Romulans and the Vulcans, and Picard took on that mantle as the Great Ambassador. And it's unfortunate because in the J.J. Abrams universe, they destroyed Romulus.
Digit was not a Star Trek fan.
Though if you do look at the
They
Kelvin,
destroyed both Romulus and Vulcan.
if you
in the
look
past.
at the Kelvin timeline, Romulus explodes 28 years after the last episode of Next Generation. And so according to some calculations,
They could be rewriting.
This show could be happening 8 years before Romulus blows
And
up.
he could be saving, but then you have Spock would have to be there. They would have to recast or just not mention. Like,
CG.
No, just not have Spock there. I do think something with the Romulans, especially like about them building a relationship with them.
especially
because
since
then-
that's how the Remans and the Romulans, again, the Remans, come on. As
Who's
Nemesis,
that?
ugh,
yeah, forget it.
they just really butchered
This is
that
this is
whole
like the
thing.
point where like Tom Hardy is in the universe. We don't need it's
Young
not-
Picard.
Will there be Borg?
See, that's the other thing. Like there are so many classic, like the foils to Picard.
With the original series, it was the last Star Trek series to really be every episode was isolated, and
Yeah.
you didn't have to watch
Classic
them
science fiction.
serialized. Exactly. Once DS9 took over, as I understand it, it became a little bit more serialized. But the Borg thread did have consistency. Like they did harken back to his experience with that constantly after he was,
So what do we have?
Taken.
We have.
I don't think that would get him excited. I don't think that would get Patrick Stewart excited, because I imagine everywhere he goes, he gets a question about the Borg.
And also, that was we had a very satisfactory conclusion to his relationship with the Borg in First Contact. He faced the Borg Queen, Locutus, Locutus, the inner turmoil, all explored, and he was able to expunge it and save the Enterprise. And save Earth. So I think he's good with the Borg. I think he's probably good with Q. I think the space archaeology aspect, the episode The Chase, where he finds interconnected DNA strands between humans, Romulans, and Klingons. That was a tribute to Cosmos. Do you remember this episode?
No.
It's one of the best episodes of Next Generation.
Really?
Picard's old archaeology professor comes to him and takes him on one last mission. The Sean Connery of it all takes him on one last archaeological expedition and uses the Enterprise, needs the help of the Enterprise, and it's a planet-trotting adventure. And both the Klingons and the Romulans
Cardassians
and the
too.
Cardassians are on the same hunt for these artifacts. And it really is going from planet. It's like an episode playing Bridge Crew. You got to go to the planet, find the artifact, go to the clue. It's a treasure hunt. And what they find at the end is when they piece it all together, they found that there is shared common lineage between humans, Cardassians, Klingons, and Romulans, and that we may have more in common than we think, even though they're all at war. It was a tribute to Carl Sagan and Cosmos and Contact, a little bit inspired by Contact, the book. And I think that story has room to explore. There's also the Data relationship, right?
That's the one I was
that was
hit on.
lingered in Nemesis. Data, of course, died at the end of Nemesis, and we had
They could bring him back.
well, they had the replacement, the version 2
Right.
of Data,
Who didn't know who he was.
but had started whistling a tune.
Right.
He had, and in the comic books at least, that character eventually becomes
Yeah.
reconstituted,
It's like
fulfilled as Data.
Spock after
And
he's
Search for
brought back
Spock.
to life.
Yeah. It was the mind melt. Savick just
Exactly.
through the conduit of Savick. Oh, I would love to see Brent Spiner. If we're talking about guest cast members from the Next Generation,
Wait, don't you want to see everyone make a cameo? I mean, everyone is somewhere.
Nope, not Troy.
Why not?
Never cared.
Not a fan?
No.
I mean, if you want, she was at least helpful many times. I would say Worf was the least helpful. in terms
where
of
I
being
mean,
a bridge
like the fan speculation, the fan fiction. We're doing fan fiction right now, essentially. The fan fiction that we've been thinking about for 25 years is going to manifest in one way or another in like a year or two.
Yeah.
So where is everyone? All right, Riker's captain of a ship.
He's Admiral.
Oh yeah, at this point, 20 years later, 20 years.
Yeah,
No
it's a
one's
lot.
really captain for. You never see real old captains, right? Admiral Riker.
Maybe Will Wheaton is captain.
Whoa.
Whoa. Wesley. That is a problem thread we have not even pulled at.
Now I'm not so sure about the show. Geordi, where's Geordi?
Geordi's got to be at like the Daystrom Institute working as like some sort of engineering professor.
All right, where's Data?
Well, in the last episode, we saw him at Cambridge doing like, research. And
He was the head of Cambridge.
Right.
He had taken on the seat of Sir Isaac Newton.
Changed his hair.
Oh yeah.
there's something about him being like a philosophy kind of thinker that struck me as true.
Where's Worf? Worf going back to the Klingons.
I think he's got to be on the Klingon homeworld.
Yeah, trying to rebuild it.
Yeah.
And then
Crusher's got to be like a scientist somewhere out in the field.
Yeah, or captain of her own ship.
Sure, but she's still like on science missions somehow.
20 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it's not the people that people remember. These are.
I mean,
Because you haven't seen most of these people at all, with the exception maybe of Geordi. Because he's, done Kickstarters, he's on Twitter.
oh, you mean the actors?
Yeah, I mean the actors.
I mean, you've also had there was life to these characters after Next Generation in Voyager, right? We saw Barclay and we saw Troy in Voyager on Earth at Starfleet Command.
Yeah. How long ago did Voyager end?
God, that was 98. I want
Yeah.
to say
It ended in 98?
no
20 years ago?
It must be plus 10 from
I mean, it's still a long
from
time.
TNG.
2001.
Yeah.
2001.
Yep. Well, I can't wait. As I said, I just hope it is more in line with the old Gene Roddenberry Star Trek than the new Star Treks.
You know what I want? I want Jonathan Frakes to actually be a director of some episodes.
Don't you think it will be?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I mean, that's what I hope, but
He's directing Discovery. He's part of that CBS All Access family.
there's this great photo of Patrick Stewart on stage, and you can see in behind him off stage both LeVar Burton and Jonathan Frakes just like standing there behind the curtain, like intently watching him talking about this announcement. So
all right, we got a year and a half or so
Oh my! There will be
to do this every week.
many bits of speculating. I don't know when's the last time I've been. This is my Twin Peaks. Like
I don't know what that means.
When David Lynch did Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah.
That was what 30 years later. When did Twin Peaks finish?
When was the return? I didn't even know about
Last
this.
year, and
Oh.
it was a big deal because Twin Peaks was such the
I
cultural
know.
phenomenon.
Yeah, I was too young for Twin Peaks.
This is this is that for me.
There's no actor I would rather see come back to television. This is it. I think Patrick Stewart.
Are you more excited for this than you
far
are
and
about
away.
episode 9?
Dude.
Oh yeah, by far.
Unfortunately, yes. Yes.
By far.
I have been let down too many times.
So CBS definitely they whatever amount of money they spent, whatever they had to do to get him to sign this. This seems like the right direction for CBS All Access, all Trek, all the time, which is now what they're doing. They've said at Star Trek Las Vegas, Discovery isn't the only thing they're doing. Of course, there's season 2 of Discovery. They're doing these short treks, these mini episodes, but they said every character from Discovery was up for consideration for a spinoff show. They're looking at the world of Star Trek. They know they have this existing fan base.
What? What do you mean every character from Discovery?
Like they're in thinking about new shows. They've considered every character in Discovery as ripe for potentially a spinoff show.
Really?
Yeah. And of course we'll have Next Generation universe, but it means they don't need to be stuck in one timeline. When we had Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager on air almost concurrently, they were all within that 24th century timeline. Now you can have stuff TOS era, post Next Gen era. They can have stuff all over the place still within the Star Trek canon.
Yeah.
And maybe interconnected. This is like all good things all at once.
This is going to confuse your parents.
They could have 3 shows in 3 different eras of Star Trek solve the same mystery.
Oh, my God.
Cross series.
That's like stuff that like even Marvel hasn't done yet.
I know. This is all good things. This is Q level TV writing and programming.
Yep.
This is why the fans aren't in charge of the writing.
All right. We'll be talking more Trek, but let's switch gears from Trek. You guys watch any movies this past weekend?
Oh, yeah, I did. I saw the Mission Impossible 6.
Fallout.
That's it.
I want to talk about it.
Yeah, you had talked about it last week, so I figured I'd take myself to go see it. It's pretty good, and if you hadn't told me that all of the special effects were practically done,
Yeah.
I would have probably assumed some weird green screen with an air tunnel. That jumping out of an airplane scene, incredible.
And I share with you a link of some behind-the-scenes B-roll that was released to press of how they filmed that.
Yep.
And there are like 4 camera people in that shot where it's a single take of Tom Cruise.
But they did it how many times?
They did 100 jumps to get
insane.
there. A year in the making for that.
I think you're hurting him by just calling it pretty good.
I when he showed me the making of clip, I said that cameraman deserves an Oscar. Like, it's an incredible accomplishment to do what he did.
Does that fall under like visual effects or something? Is there an Oscar category for that kind of stuff?
I think that's cinematography.
Yeah, but they take
camera.
It's
technical.
They consider the whole movie when they would give those awards.
Right.
But that stunt was absolutely remarkable. I couldn't believe that. The cameraman has a camera mounted on his head.
You
on
can
his
even see
helmet.
the GoPro underneath that camera. There's
And
2 cameras.
He has to keep Tom Cruise in frame while the cameraman jumps out of the plane backwards.
Yep.
Tom Cruise jumps in front of him. Then the cameraman has to go down faster than Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise has to catch up with him. They have to come within camera range.
Yep.
And he
In
has
focus.
to capture Tom Cruise's face.
Yes.
How does he even know where the camera's pointed? Does he have a monitor in his helmet?
Nope.
Insane.
Just intuition
Yeah.
and practice. Insane. And there's a behind-the-scenes person walking behind the camera, and then jumping ahead. That got me. I was sweating watching that behind-the-scenes footage. I'm like, this person's standing on the edge of a plane, making sure he has to get the shot of the other shot, and not be in the way of the shot, and jump out of a plane and deploy a parachute, all at the same time.
Yeah.
All in sequence.
And it was the Mission Impossible film that I wanted. It's just distilled Mission Impossible. It's
Action.
Yeah, and plan and like how are they going to solve this? Of course, like there's no possible way they could have planned everything out ahead of time. But that's the fun.
Yeah.
And it was the movie I wanted.
Did you want another one after seeing it?
You're
happy like end.
Yeah, I think that was a good one.
I'm good for the end here too.
I'd be too worried that it wouldn't work out again.
Yeah. There's a really great interview. The director and writer is Christopher McQuarrie, and he did a 3-hour interview with Empire Magazine. There's a podcast I've been listening to, and it's a really good dive into breaking down a lot of the scenes, not just the arms reloading scene in the bathroom, but how Christopher McQuarrie directed each of these scenes, wrote them, and apparently this movie was constructed almost on the fly. Problems were solved the day of shooting.
Really?
Things were written in the day of shooting, where they knew Tom Cruise wanted to jump out of an airplane. They knew that was going in the movie. He wanted the action scene where he would jump out of an airplane. He wanted an action scene where he'd be flying a helicopter at another helicopter. And they pick cities, they pick locations. They want to film in Paris, they want to film in London, they want to film in somewhere green and remote, and they pick New Zealand, and then they kind of wrote a story around that.
Have you seen Notes on a Scene that Vanity Fair does?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it seems like this movie would be perfect for this.
And
Notes
I think
on a
Chris
Scene
McQuarrie does. I think there is one for this, for the bathroom fight scene, or if it's not the Vanity Fair, he talks about it in some other interview. But yeah, the Black Panther one is very good for that series.
I also liked the fact that the trailers led me to think people were bad when they weren't at certain scenes in the movie.
Oh,
So I don't know. I don't know. It's still too early to spoil things, but
Yeah.
this is an example of a movie with a trailer that I think was carefully cut, and I really like that.
well, the funny thing is he talks about in the trailer, two things about the trailer. One is, and I think trailers talk is fair here, even though the movie's 2 weeks old. There are action sequences in the trailer that are not in the final film.
Oh,
In
really?
the trailer, you see and people were excited, waiting to see. In the trailer, there's 2 explicit shots. One, Tom Cruise rappelling down on top of the Paris, the glass building,
Mm-hmm.
the rave scene. He's rappelling and he's swinging, and also the helicopter. Him in the helicopter, almost ramming a truck, the back of a semi truck. And pulling up. That
Oh, right.
scene is
Yeah.
not in the movie at all.
Like a wooded street.
Yeah, and they talk about how the movie originally cut was 2 hours, 40 minutes long, and things were being bogged down, and the notes they were getting from test audiences was the action sequences are too long. There's too much action, because action can be exhausting.
Yeah.
And just like dialogue and exposition can slow down your movie, relentless action can get you out of breath.
Wow, it's expensive action.
And so they had to cut things out, and these are tough things that they did in the edit.
Does that bother you? I mean, Infinity War did the same thing. We saw like 3 scenes in the trailer that weren't in the movie.
I am so fascinated because I don't have that mind, and I can appreciate it after the fact. But for an editor and a director to sit in a room, because they say a movie's made 3 times, when it's written, when it's shot, and when it's edited. But at that last phase, when they're editing it and they have what they think is right, they get all the coverage, they get all the dialogue, they're really happy with the emotional resonance, and they've done test screenings, and maybe people love the scene, or maybe people they respond to it, but they feel like it's not essential to the story. For someone who's invested not only the time, the energy, but the hundreds of millions of dollars to put this story together, to recognize that something is extraneous to their final cut and to remove it, and to see what it looks like, and to feel like, okay, it can still work without that, and it works better without it.
It's a pro move.
That is.
It's a pro move.
Why they win awards.
You have to have that detachment from your work in order to make the best work.
Right. So I implore you, even if you're a fan of action movies, we talk about Infinity War and loving Infinity War, but this is kind of like the opposite of Infinity War, in that it's all in camera and in real locations. And just a relentless action movie. I love the spit out of it. I'll probably watch it again.
Infinity War is as real as you want it to be, Kishore. Don't listen to him.
I mean, I thought it was a documentary.
Some other things in pop culture. We had a trailer for a new Netflix. I thought it was a movie, but it's a series. It's called Maniac, and it stars the stars of Superbad, Jonah Hill and Emma Stone.
An unrecognizable Jonah Hill.
He's gone through it. There's a website. Is Jonah Hill fat now? Because he kind of loses weight and gains weight for different roles, and he's lost weight for this role. And it's a story, a science fiction story. I think it's an adaptation, I want to say, of a Norwegian TV series about 2 people who go through medical drug trials and have some type of crazy psychedelic experience with it. It's a comedy, science fiction comedy, but what really captures me is that this is not. I was afraid this is one of those Netflix movies that or Netflix things where they just bought the rights to, or something that was already produced.
Yeah.
Because Netflix, for better or worse, it's been referred to as, or probably for worse, even though they spend so much money on their content, it's a dumping grounds for studios who don't want, found that they don't want to put certain movies in theaters, so they'll just sell to Netflix.
Mm-hmm. But this is a series.
This is a series from the ground up, and written and directed by Cary Fukunaga, the director of the entire first season of True Detective.
Oh my God, are you serious?
I am serious.
Wow.
That was the good season of True Detective,
Yes.
right?
He directed every single episode in season 1, True Detective. He did Beasts of No Nation for Netflix. Which won several awards. That was the war movie, the African war movie, a child soldier movie, and this is his next thing.
This Maniac trailer is really intriguing because I don't think you sold it quite so well. It has almost a Stranger Things kind of vibe in that there's this unknown
organization,
but as well as the effects of whatever they're doing to these people. Well, they have them in a lab, in funny seats. There's a lot of money behind this research.
Yeah,
and there's some kind of maybe dream or subconscious connection that they're making with these people. And they have the two stars, Jonah Hill and Emma Stone. They have them in their subconscious relating to one another.
So to me, it's like the technology and the science fiction of Inception, combined with the perhaps comedy, romance, and melodrama of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
That's just what I would have thought too.
And Eternal Sunshine, wonderful movie, but it's also over 10 years old at this point, and this could be that for a new generation and new cast of actors.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Very excited for this. Maniac
comes out like next month.
I know, this is one of those. It's amazing. Like Netflix trailers dropping. Yeah. Very excited. We're going to see all episodes in a month, and we're already subscribing to it. Disenchantment. The reviews are out for the first season. They're doing a full season, 20 episodes. The first half season's coming out in 2 weeks or so, and this is the medieval animated series. Reviews are good.
Reviews are very positive. They say it's pretty gory, which is a little surprising given that it's Matt Groening. But I think it's gory probably in the Matt Groening way.
Yeah,
like a bunch
cartoonish.
of people step on swords and
It's
get
not
stabbed.
going to be Rick and Morty. It's not going to be rated R. It's going to be rated, what did R second say, like PG-11. Or not even PG-13. Very, very excited about that. Making Netflix, good decisions on Netflix.
When is that hitting Netflix?
I think the 14th of August.
17th.
This month.
Yeah,
Wow.
like a week and a half.
Okay.
That's where the reviews are out. Disney, of course, is working on its own streaming service, which we anticipate will have all the Marvel movies, its new TV shows, the new Star Wars TV show, live-action TV show, which we know nothing about, except that the budget may be $100 million for the series, $10 million an episode, which is, we're talking about Game of Thrones territory.
Yeah, but
these
in
days.
2024?
Yeah.
That's,
Man,
what's $100 million in 2024?
That's like 5 Bitcoin, right?
Exactly.
What they also will have in the Star Wars universe, the 2024 thing is actually the original Star Wars.
Oh, right.
So maybe the new series. What I think will happen is, Episode 9 is going to come out. That's next year, and they'll probably have this ready soon after Episode 9, just to get the momentum. Right? You've wrapped the Skywalker.
You think so?
The trilogy of
That
trilogies.
seems soon.
And you want to get people keep the Star Wars momentum going. Who knows what the status is on the standalone films? We'll get people onto $10 a month, $15 a month subscription to your streaming service to see new live-action Star Wars stuff. What you won't be able to see, and this is a 2024 reference, is the original Star Wars movies on the streaming service, because that is still locked into a deal with, I believe, TNT, Turner, which still has the rights to that.
And they don't want to sell them back.
No, who would?
Well, I bet Turner would for the right money.
Well, they
I agree with
stick it
Jeremy.
to 'em.
I think this is a negotiating ploy.
Oh, really?
Like, we'll leak that we don't want to sell it, and then Disney will cough up more money.
You think that's a selling point for people, the subscription service? I think it's new content. It's not going to be original Star Wars.
I think if you buy into the subscription service and you're like, I can't watch Empire, you're going to be irritated by it.
Pay $10 on iTunes. Right? Like, Disney still makes money there. Right? You know what they could do? They'll release a 4K Blu-ray. They got the rights to that. That will get people to buy it on iTunes.
You know what?
They'll make a ton of money on that.
You know what would work is if they they aired the original cut. The original New Hope.
The despecialized?
Yeah, the despecialized.
I don't think
Never happened.
it'll never happen.
I feel like that's probably in a clause in
Dude.
George Lucas's sale contract to Disney.
If money is on the line, it will happen. I hold out hope.
You know, Jeremy, I know you said you were maybe more excited for new Star Trek than new Star Wars, or at least Episode 9. And some of that's probably from your reception to Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Last Jedi, a little controversial, and there is a movement online of haters
What?
of The Last Jedi.
What?
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to.
No pulling at that thread.
We're not going to go.
No.
Came out before the internet. I mean, why are people up in arms about the last? What? Oh, the Last Jedi. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
You're thinking about like Return of
I
the
thought you were talking
Jedi?
about Return of the Jedi.
Like, why did they burn him on the pyre? That's not how Ewok songs go.
I'm sure there was ire for Return of the Jedi as well.
Yeah.
You know, why did they change the name? Why isn't it Revenge of the Jedi? We'll never know. Well, I wasn't on the message boards back then. What that community was like. There is a fan film, and made by a very industrious filmmaker, Dana James Jones. That is a riff on Brick, Rian Johnson's film, one of his breakout films.
Excellent. I think his best film.
I love Brothers Bloom, maybe a little more than Brick, but definitely a huge indie hit, well worth watching, maybe with subtitles, because some of that dialogue can go real fast. And this fan film is about Rian Johnson, director Rian Johnson as the main character in the style of Brick, shot in many of the same locations as Brick, and it is it's a really wonderful.
It's a good idea.
Film. 15 minutes.
That's a nice way to. That's a good idea.
Obviously a parody, so this
Yes.
is all about having fun.
If you have a limited budget and you want to make a cool parody, this
you
makes
should
sense.
totally watch it. Rian Johnson tweeted about it and said his mind was blown from this tribute. Some other superhero news. DC, of course, trying to rev up its movie franchises. Matt Reeves finally addressed this Batman, his upcoming Batman.
The Batman.
So
Who's Matt Reeves?
Matt Reeves, the director of War of the Planet of the Apes and the last two Planet of the Apes movies. He also directed Cloverfield.
Oh.
And he has been hired by Warner Brothers to write and direct the next Batman film after Ben Affleck left the project. And the big speculation is, will Ben Affleck be Batman in this next Batman film? And Matt Reeves finally addressed it. He didn't confirm or deny. He said that we're still working on Ben Affleck's involvement and in some way. So I think it's not going to happen. He says that the film will fit. It won't be an origin story. It won't be year one, even though they love year one. But it will fit in the DC cinematic universe in some way.
Is Ben Affleck a draw for these Batman movies, do you think?
No, it's Batman.
Yeah.
You don't need a.
That's what
you
I'm
can
thinking.
put anybody in that.
I will
suit.
say Ben Affleck doesn't necessarily draw, especially not after Justice League. I thought he did a better job in Batman v Superman, to be honest. But continuity is a draw for fans. Change is tough for fans. Whenever you change things up.
Is it? Okay. I'll take your word for it. I feel like if they got Michael Keaton back, that would be the best Batman.
No, I think that would
20
represent
years later?
a tone shift.
Do an older Batman. Yeah.
Older Batman's fine, but I think you can recast that with a
Josh
million
Brolin.
people.
Josh
But
Brolin.
bring him.
It's time now for Josh
Wait,
Brolin.
you want
be
him to
Batman.
have every
Yes.
great character
Yes.
in comic book
deserves it.
history?
Have you seen Josh Brolin? I rewatched. I know you did this too. Rewatched Westworld, right? The original Westworld, 1973.
Yeah.
You know, it stars Josh Brolin's dad, James Brolin,
Okay.
and he looks. James Brolin in Westworld and in real life, the actor looks exactly like Christian Bale,
That's weird.
who played Batman.
Yep.
So Josh Brolin could totally play the older Christian Bale Batman.
I'm sure Josh Brolin would be a great Batman.
He would be a wonderful Batman.
Little old, though.
Yeah, older.
Okay.
Yeah, close to retirement, coming out of retirement, that kind of thing.
All right.
Yeah. There's two other DC films in the works. One, Birds of Prey. This is about some of the female supervillains and heroes of the DC universe teaming up. And they may have a villain for this. Villain is maybe Black Mask.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So returning back to like mob style
Yes.
villains.
A little bit of a supernatural aspect, a little darker. Like, will his face actually be a skull? Who knows? I would like for it not to just be a mask, a skull mask.
But I like the interpretation of him as a mob-like character, though.
If there's one thing being on this podcast to stop me, it is that there's an endless well of comic book characters to draw from.
You haven't even begun
Exactly.
to scratch the surface on the weird characters. Have I ever told you about Asbestos Man?
Why?
We'll save that for another day.
Why doesn't Norm ever say a character and you say, who's that? You never say that. You know all these guys.
I think we had a shared childhood.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Very impressive.
My knowledge is just a subset of Kishore's knowledge.
Oh, I see.
I don't
it
think
could go
that's
the other
true.
way around.
Yeah. If you would say, yeah, I'm an Asbestos Man, who the heck is that? And then DC also announced they're finally kicking off a Supergirl movie set in the DCU. And there is a very successful Supergirl TV show, and any Supergirl movie, unfortunately, will beg the question, and fans, where's Superman? What role does Superman play? Now, in Man of Steel,
F Superman.
yeah. In the Zack Snyder first Man of Steel movie, the speculation was that Supergirl was on that crashed Ark ship in Antarctica, what became his Fortress of Solitude, because you had one open hibernation capsule, and so that
What?
Supergirl had survived and been living among us.
He threw the crystal.
No,
in-
that's the Donner Superman.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
talking-
different than yours?
In there's no yours or mine. I'm just saying in Zack Snyder's Man of
Oh,
Steel.
okay. Oh, right.
His
right.
he finds the exploratory ship from Krypton on Earth, and there's an
right.
open capsule. So
That's right.
Supergirl could have been living among us the whole time. I would like Supergirl to be older than Superman. I don't think it needs to be just like the younger cousin. To be an elder, that would be cool.
There was a Supergirl movie already, right?
Yeah, Helen Slater. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she the actress is in the Supergirl TV show as well. And then finally, I've talked about this before. One of my favorite comic book series that had been in the works as some kind of TV show or movie is Y: The Last Man, and it's finally going to become a TV show. And they announced some casting. I'm not super pumped with the casting because the kid they got to play York for Y: The Last Man it's the kid from The Killing of a Sacred Deer and Dunkirk, who just wasn't who I had in my head.
Now he's talking about stuff I don't know.
And this is the premise for this series. It's written by Brian K. Vaughan, a 40-something issue series, I want to say, about a world where suddenly, in a moment, every mammal with the Y chromosome dies. Every man dies instantaneously,
Oh, it's
except for one. It's like a Thanos snap,
How about that?
except for one dude,
Not random.
and his monkey.
Sure.
The monkey.
Because if you're going to do this, leave him with a monkey at least.
he's a magician too. All right, let's get to tech.
Is the monkey a male?
Yes.
Oh.
The monkey is also a
Okay.
male and will be CG in the new show. Makes sense. Hey, we got new Android.
Yeah, I haven't installed it yet because it just released today. But Android Pie is here. I had the beta for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months. I would say like the big shifts that you can expect for Android Pie, and it's coming for Pixel, Pixel 2, and for the Essential phone, which was actually a little bit of a surprise that the Essential was going to get it.
Essential phone, which was on the Amazon Day deal, like $200.
Mm-hmm.
What a deal!
I think the biggest change is in terms of the user experience is going to be the swipe up feature that is iPhone X like in its nature. It's not exactly like it, but it's pretty close. That took some getting used to, but I really liked it on the bigger, especially on the bigger phones. The notifications are streamlined in a way that I think makes sense. There's more sort of like you can kind of dive into the app through the notifications. So that's really useful for something like Slack, where I can actually do much more than just see the notification, but reply, but also have some limited app features in it. I think the one most people are talking about is this like digital well-being thing that we talked about at I/O. That you can limit your app time, you can grayscale your phone, it can tell you all about, where you're spending your time. I think we've seen those suite of applications in, kind of be the rage this year. I don't know how much I'm going to actually use those features, even though I probably should use those features. But those are the big things. So this isn't like a massive overhaul like generations before, like going from Lollipop to KitKat, but it's pretty significant versus what we saw from like M to N.
And battery life also.
Yeah,
have you noticed any
in the
improvements?
beta, I was testing the battery life and I did not see any really meaningful improvement, because for me, like battery life improvement, even if it's claimed to be 5%, in like real life, if the battery gets me through the day, like going from 14 hours to like 14 and a half hours doesn't really have any measurable impact on my life. So really, I felt it nibbling at the edges. What you get is better insight into what apps are using battery more real time. That already exists in Oreo, but you get even better control of it.
Does Google sync up the release of their OSs with a hardware refresh, in the same way that Apple does?
So no, because Pi is out today, and the new Pixel phones aren't slated to come out till later this fall.
Though we've seen leaked renders, and I mean, the expectation is that those will have it. But yeah, the ecosystem's so big now that there are plenty of quote unquote flagships that can still take advantage of this update. And it's a pretty wide offering for phones that will get the update. The big question is, now that they're at P, what dessert will they have at Q?
Is there a Q dessert?
Well, quiche. Would you consider quiche a dessert?
Well, it's science quiche. I consider it much more than a dessert. No, that's not a dessert.
Yeah. No sweet quiches.
That's a tricky one. Could be a play on words coming.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it'll have support for notches, because notches are a thing now.
Support for notches. Great.
Hey, if you can't beat them,
Yeah.
copy them.
Did I see that the new iPad might have a notch?
Is that really?
I don't know.
What do you need to do that for?
I mean,
They
the
will-
only reason the iPad would need a notch is if they were going for a real edge-to-edge screen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just
Exactly. That's it.
have a band, a very small band,
Yeah.
because relative to the phone, the bezel. If you had a bezel that's as high as the notches on the phone, that's still a very thin bezel for an iPad.
Then they saw an icon for the next iPad inside the iOS beta, and it didn't have a button. So it appears to be moving towards the same Face ID technology.
You think Apple would, and Johnny Ive's team would be so resistant to the design aesthetic that some of the Android phone makers have done, which is just to have it, yes, the curve edge on the screen, but have it just reduced so it's a thicker bezel just on one side, right? That uneven-
asymmetrical?
No.
just a little
shit.
bit of a chin or
Yeah.
a little bit of a forehead bezel. On an iPad, that's not that much.
No, Johnny Ive would never.
They
allow
want
that.
edge to edge. I don't want edge to edge screen on an iPad because the way you hold it, like with a phone, you can grip the sides of the phone, and having the edge screen, you're making the most out of it. Even on the iPhone 10, the bezel is there. When you say edge to edge, there is more of a bezel from the edge of the curve than it is on previous phones. It's reduced. On the iPad, you grip it with your palm.
Yeah.
Right, the palm of your thumb that holds the side of the iPad. You don't want screen there.
Yeah.
You want something to hold. Who knows? We're expecting a new iPad sometime this fall. The last new iPad was the one for the education market, what they did the Chicago event. But
Yeah, that's right.
I think Face ID, yes. I don't think notch, and I'm fine if the button's gone. Yeah, no more mechanical problem. Another part that unneeded.
I'm not on the Touch ID is worse than Face ID pool, but I understand most people feel that way.
Well, no one's saying Touch ID is worse than Face ID.
No.
I'm just saying that Face ID is totally suitable.
Yeah.
And for the iPad, for the phone, I understand why some people really want Touch ID back because they want to pick up their phone and immediately unlock it without having to look at it.
Yep.
And they want the first glance to be content, not an unlock screen. With the iPad, you're not doing that. The iPad's pretty big. Like, you're not one hand grabbing it and not looking at it. Like, it's sitting on a table. It's not sitting in your phone, your car charger thing.
Whatever.
Or in your pocket.
Did you see this guy? He tweeted a game. This is amazing stuff. This guy, he tweeted source code, and if you run this, it will make a game. Now, he's done it before. A couple years ago, he did the same thing during the 120 character limit that they used to have on Twitter?
140.
I'm sorry, 140 character limit. He tweeted a string of what seemed to be like random stuff, and it was actually base 64 code that if you run this at a Linux prompt or something, it was actually a Perl command that would execute this block of a code, and it turned it into an ISO that if you burned it to a floppy, it would just run. Well, he redid it now 240 what was it, twice now, so 280 characters, and now it's a bootable CD-ROM.
What?
Holy crap.
240 characters. I keep saying this wrong. 480 characters. If you run this,
Just 480 characters.
yeah, if you run this, it's a Perl command, Perl, space, -e, space, and then this crazy amount of this random gibberish, which gets decoded. It will create an ISO, and if you burn that ISO to a CD-ROM, this is not like code, and then it runs a game. It runs this like Tron/Worm game, snake game, where you just chase your tail and you try to avoid hitting your tail. But it's not like it takes advantage of DirectX or some weird game engine. This is x86 assembly code that it takes advantage of your computer's BIOS, not even your operating system. And it just runs and just runs. It's like...
This is science fiction.
It's
It's
really
like
impressive.
walking up to an Android and whispering 2 lines of code and
Exactly.
changing its programming.
Yeah, because it is a very small amount of space
Yeah.
to fit anything into, including interface, graphics, logic.
Would you like to play a game? Next tweet.
It's very impressive. The Verge covered it. You can find out. He goes through the entire process at his website.
What's his Twitter handle? I'll put a link in the show notes. But
I can't. It's like a gibberish thing. I have no idea. But yeah, just search for tweet containing an entirely playable retro-style arcade game.
Hey, what do you call Nintendo's first video game console in America?
We colloquially say NES.
I agree.
Right.
NES.
And not NES.
But that's just because it's faster. I think we don't say NES because
Do you say
it's 3
LED
syllables.
or LED?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I say LED.
Because LED is another thing in the real world.
That might be why.
Oh. LEDs. You don't
Oh
say
God, that would
no?
hurt. That hurts my ears.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I should refrain.
No,
from
I
saying
would
that.
correct somebody who said that.
I've been known to say that in the past. Well, NES and NES is something that people may be correcting each other on because, according to Nintendo Japan's some official documentation, the pronunciation of Nintendo is NES.
Yeah, so we were right.
That's interesting. Because it is an acronym, right? It should be NES, but it's just been embraced as NES.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's official support from Nintendo Japan.
That's like good old games, GOG.
GOG.
They are no longer good old games. They are officially GOG. They abandoned what used to be the reason that they had that acronym.
Well, it's like Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi Channel used to be Science Fiction, SCIFI, and then, like, what was it, a decade ago, they changed the SYFY.
Oh, okay.
And it's just because
just thing.
Sci-Fi became its own thing,
Yeah.
and it no longer stood for science fiction.
They also stopped putting science fiction shows on their channel and also heard that.
right? Like,
Is that true?
They don't have nearly as many as they used to. All right, more video game news.
Yep.
Biggest story of the week. Let's talk Fortnite,
Uh-oh.
where all the kids are.
Mm-hmm.
Fortnite, I actually think this is a big deal. Fortnite is releasing its Android version, but they're not releasing it through the Google Play Store. You have to go to Epic's website.
You think is that confidence on their part that the users, that the kids want Fortnite so much that they will. The inconvenience of having to go to a third party or I guess a first party website and downloading it directly and installing an APK is not going to hinder their adoption and sales.
Is this to avoid a revenue share?
A
30% revenue
30%
share.
cut.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a
Big
that's
move.
a big confidence move, and we'll see pretty shortly how that works out. But I mean, given just how popular that game has maintained,
And how much money it's made.
yeah, it has made an excessive amount of money, and
Obscene. It's obscene.
yeah,
And, you know, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about whether or not that generation is really super savvy when it comes to technology, because like I have not seen too many examples of my kids figuring technology out for themselves. So because I'm around, they always have these questions answered. But at the same time, have you ever tried to install a Minecraft mod? It's insane. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid how difficult it is. So
it's a good way to infect your phone too.
So I'm sure going to install an APK at a third-party site is not a big deal to them.
Well, the same thing may also be happening to Fallout, as Fallout 76, which is coming out this fall, I guess, is going to be not on Steam. You won't be
Again,
able to
this is
buy-
a money play.
This is a money play. This is Bethesda having its own launcher and having its own way for you to download. And plenty of publishers are doing this. The EA has EA Play. Ubi has Uplay.
Yeah.
But
But Bethesda hasn't done this before. Like, you could get Doom and the last Fallout on Steam, right?
Yeah. Oh, no. This is the first Bethesda game in like a decade that you won't be able to buy on Steam. And they think their fan base is big enough that you will just download and have another thing in your system tray.
I don't know about this one. Like Fortnite, that makes sense. They have a rabid user base. When people have gone against Steam, they've been hurt.
You think Steam?
And Steam's not easy to make a system that works as well as Steam does.
The monopoly that Steam has, you think a time for that is coming to an end? You think
No.
Somebody has to make something that works. That's a problem. Steam
here's
is reliable.
my problem with Steam. I don't care that they have a monopoly because it does. For the most part, launching the games works. The games are all there. The UI sucks.
Yeah, who
The
cares?
Steam UI is so terrible. The store browsing, the library, the community function, the embedded web page, the news feeds.
But there's the whole separate interface for the big screen model.
Oh, I like the big screen model. I just wish that was on desktop.
It is.
I wish it was in a window.
Okay.
I don't want it full screen.
Got it.
I mean, look at the alternatives. You had to physically call somebody to unlock your Ubi account the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, until somebody makes something that is reliable and scalable, I don't think Steam has anything to worry about. And they have no incentive to change anything.
And Blizzard, of course, has done this forever with their own with BattleNet.
But that's been around since what, the mid '90s. So
That's
they
true.
have some legacy. there.
BattleNet's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of streaming services, right? For video games. Of course, we're not paying monthly subscriptions for these, but just what they're taking is RAM. Like I have so many of these system tray icons for Uplay, EA Play,
Yeah.
and Steam and Discord and good old games. And
Here's the thing.
I just want one place to launch it all.
Yes, and I would bet you will. I bet it will come to Steam. And if I were them, I would want to sell it through my own store for the first couple months, because that's a huge amount of money that you're giving up. And after that, yeah, it'll trickle down, and you'll want to have increased the number of players, and you'll want to have more revenue, and you'll release it on Steam.
Yes, and I think maybe because this game is so online dependent. Yeah, you can play single player. It's online connected.
Yep.
The worries about servers at launch, this is hedging their bets
That's
too.
an interesting point.
Right? Like if they're going through their servers and they're getting the most money out this way, maybe it won't sell as many initially, but they're in it for the long run. They're in it to deploy content. They're in it to get, to create an MMO essentially. So maybe this is just a smart business decision and the right place to test the waters. I'm sure they've done the math. They have the Excel sheets and upon Excel sheets of data to make this decision, this important financial decision.
You
for
heard it
them.
here. They have Excel sheets.
They
at
have the
Bethesda.
Excel sheets. That's if I know anything about the bean counters, they have the Excel sheets. And Last couple bits of technology news.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still waiting for that Apple wireless charger.
Yep.
We
That
thought it was
did-
going to come at WWDC.
What's so hard about making it?
Well, it's not just the charging, the physical aspect. It's the software. I think that was the problem. They wanted a single charger that would work for
All three
phone,
things.
all three things seamlessly, all three things at once charging.
Why is that hard?
They
and
announced
also
it
have
forever
the
ago.
info, the data sent back to the phone on the charging states of all three things.
This is a $1 trillion company, and they can't figure this out.
This is true. You know, I bet they just want to find ways to sell more dongles for the charger. The charger is the anti-dongle, and they've made their trillions with the dongles.
Do you think Apple has Excel spreadsheets and they figured out this wasn't going to make them as much money as they thought?
As dongles,
Maybe
the
They have-
dongle
they have-
market was so much more lucrative for them.
They might have spreadsheets too at Apple.
I'm sorry, they don't have Excel docs, it's iBooks
It's
or whatever.
Do you think they actually use
What's
iBooks?
it called?
What's the Apple version
Is
on
it
iWork
Sheets or something?
Yeah, they have.
No, that's Google's thing.
Yeah, they don't use Excel.
It's
there.
not Pages. Who knows what it is?
Who-
Numbers?
Numbers. That's what it is. Numbers. They got numbers over there at Apple, like 1 trillion numbers.
Oh man, the rumor is the next iPhone won't have the headphone dongle.
Wait, what? Oh,
Yeah.
the dongle.
Yeah,
Just the dongle.
The headphone
included.
dongle. It's like a $10 part.
I bet they've done the surveys, and at this point, I know it's a very like meme-ified thing, and we can poke fun of it, the dongle problem. And you're the only one here, Jeremy, that uses a MacBook Pro. So is the dongle problem like relevant to you?
There's no dongle. What do you mean? There's a
Like,
headphone jack on the MacBook.
no? Do you have to use? I mean, the fact that you're stuck with essentially USB-C
Oh,
for HDMI, for
yeah.
for Ethernet, like, are you in a world of dongle nesting?
I had to buy extra components just to plug things into the computer. It's stupid. Absolutely stupid. They should.
What-
I love maybe 2 USB-C ports, but give me regular USB. Absolutely. And of course, I've said a million times, I hate that there's no headphone jack on the iPhone.
So you're talking about 3 separate problems here. One, you're talking about the analog, the refusal of removing this analog port, the headphone jack.
Yeah.
Right. That's I think a philosophical question about whether you're a tried and true mass market connection device, whether it should or can be retired at any point, which Apple has done before in the past with CD-ROM drives and the like. But obviously a lot of resistance, I think, still up for debate. I agree. I would love to headphone check.
I think they've turned from doing what's best for the consumer and look forward-facing to doing what's best for Apple.
Well, their argument is that it's what's best for the consumer because
Yeah.
they think wireless digital is the future. So the other 2 questions then is, one, USB-C for everything, and whether USB-C is the right standard for all the ports because of all the confusion with USB-C dongles in general and different types of USB-C cables and whether they can carry video signals. And USB-C, yes, is universal, but it's not all USB-C is created equal, right? There's confusion there that wasn't there previously with USB-A. USB-A, you knew there were 2 types. The blue one was a fast one. The black one was a slow one. USB 2, USB 3. USB-C, a little more complicated. And then the third thing is just the number of USB-C ports, right? And the fact that they can get away with selling a laptop with how many USB-C ports you have?
4.
4? Is 4 enough? And on the MacBook Airs, it's 1.
Well, one
Or
of
no,
them.
not MacBook Airs, the MacBooks.
So you need one for power for sure, and then it's basically the question is how many more USB ports do you need beyond your power one?
I think 4 is a good number. Anything fewer than 4, I think, is being greedy and inconveniencing the user. But the other problem is that they launched this without a solution for wireless. If they had taken away a real solution for wireless, selling Bose headphones and Beats headphones, wireless headphones, AirPods, I think, was one step of the way there. And the AirPods, the success of the AirPods and the ease of use of the AirPods, even though they are $160, I think is a good argument for getting rid of the headphone jack, at least from a moving to technology forward perspective. They invested in the wireless technology to make AirPods just work. We don't have power that just works wirelessly. When they clearly can't solve that problem with their wireless charger.
A headphone jack does not exclude the possibility of using wireless headphones.
Correct. And completely agree. But even I'm talking about the other aspects of the dongle problem would be much less of a problem if they had built the standards and launched a whole ecosystem of wireless products for power, for video, for data that just work. Right now, the wireless things we can rely on are keyboard, mouse, and maybe headphones. And that's it. And that's just not sufficient. And so it's too early. We're still in the wired world, and the sacrifice they make isn't necessarily for the money, but I think it's more the stubborn design. For them, it's just like inelegant to have ports.
I don't think so. I think they want to get rid of the analog hole. They don't like that Square could use the headphone jack in order to swipe charges. They want control.
They want a layer of software. They want to
yeah. They want to have, and they want it. You know, if you want to use a lightning jack, they want that royalty.
Right. Well, I'm glad it's not lightning jack everywhere. Right. Imagine a MacBook where it was 4 lightning jack cable ports as opposed to USB-C. At least USB-C is a cross-platform standard, as flawed as it is. All right. Someone put a story about Dota.
Yeah. So Elon, our friend, has
friend with air quotes.
I mean, you guys don't have dinner with him weekly, no. He helped fund a group that is actually using AI to actually play Dota, and this past weekend they beat a team of former pros. This AI just wiped the floor with them. So it wasn't even close.
So Dota is a very popular game. It's what do they call this type of game? I forget.
It's a MOBA.
Yeah, MOBA, exactly. Where you control like one big giant character and sort of real-time strategy, but you're more focused on a single guy. Is that the idea? I never played Dota.
It was too much micro for me.
Yeah, but it's a hugely popular competitive game.
I mean, it is one of the leading esports games.
Yes.
They had to simplify the situation because I think you can choose there's 100 characters or something. So the AI simplified it to for this match you could only choose from 18 characters.
And they adjusted the rules, something about the towers. They had to have the
They had
stipulations.
slightly simplified rules. But the AI demolished them. In the first game, the humans didn't even destroy a tower.
Yeah. And then the humans destroyed one tower in the second game. But the AI won the first 2 games. So they played a third game just for funsies. The humans won that one. Let's give them some credit. Maybe they learned a little bit of something from the first 2 games.
I think the AIs were like, these weak humans, let's show them some pity.
Honestly, the fact that it can't just play the game out, right? I'm less interested.
No, I mean, when we've talked about AI playing games in the past, it's always been chess or even Go, as complicated as Go is. You can imagine a computer playing that game. Now we're talking about something as really varied as Dota.
Yeah.
Where you're microing all these units, just the perturbations of this, it seems overwhelming.
I want to know the actual mechanics of how it plays. It doesn't move a mouse, does it? It must be connected to the game.
I mean, to play a human, doesn't it have to? Because if it has some sort of direct link.
But is it the mouse? Can it move a mouse to an exact point? Is it using optical recognition to see where the mouse is on the screen? I want to know, how is that actually functioning? It's not talking to a human in the way that Go did and instructing a human avatar to perform certain moves. It must be doing them rapidly. And if so, then its actual ability to play fast will outpace a human. So that's not exactly fair.
That's true. I mean, that'd be like playing a shooter, and it'd be it had perfect aim.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious about that. But I also look forward to when this can happen without any stipulations. It can just play the game as is, off the shelf. That will be powerful.
Do you think game designers would ever make a game that they designed
to combat AI?
Yeah.
To make AI proof?
What do you mean? Like
unlearnable or something that changes? I mean, a game that has emotion as a requirement, that has conversation as a requirement.
Oh, well, that's just the Turing test.
No. There's more manipulation. I'm talking about conversation is different than language.
Mm-hmm.
Real conversation. I think. What you think an AI could do well at yeah, it's a good question. What are the games that AI really fail at?
Well, they thought Go was the pinnacle of strategy.
But that's
too many permutations.
Too many, right? That's a numbers problem. That's not a fundamental difference between how humans work and how computers.
But that was a game that was beyond the calculation capability of a computer, that you couldn't run all the possibilities.
I wonder if it's something like Monopoly. It couldn't play because
No.
it's like,
No way.
well, because Monopoly is a game of like deceit and making deals and really like ruining friendships. But
There's
I mean,
YouTube videos about how to win Monopoly every time. I think that's a solved game.
like for an AI though, I always thought there was a human component to Monopoly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I always thought Monopoly was good until I learned that it wasn't.
No, there are definitely good stories about, like,
What about Catan? Like, would you
no, Catan is.
enjoy playing a computer at Catan?
I do play computer Catan on a regular basis.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and they go.
Catan VR. Yeah.
And how are they?
They are very good.
Oh my gosh.
They're not good at they are tough to manipulate. It
Oh,
makes
really?
the game, because Catan has a whole trading aspect, negotiating, and there is a lot of like emotion
Yeah.
to that, and you can't manipulate the AI that way. They're just so fixed. So they break the game more than they break the game in order to win it, to play more optimally.
That's interesting because The Verge reported on this AI match, and they said what was interesting about the AIs in the Dota match was their complete lack of indecisiveness. That when you watch human players, they tend to like, am I going to have this conflict? Am I going to draw them back to this spot where it's better? And the AI would just go all in.
It's also like games where the AI doesn't have perfect information, right? Where so much of it is, there are some games that are just luck driven,
Yeah.
and humans can have advantages there, or at least be on the same footing as AI, where they can't play perfectly. But you just put in computer vision, right? If we're talking about a game like poker, right? An AI can play perfectly numerically, mathematically in poker, and that is a valid strategy.
And just still may not win, right?
And still may not win, but also could still win a large amount of time because you just calculate numbers and you have your charts, and you keep on improving your charts based on how the other players are playing. You just build in computer vision, right? Do we count computer vision in AI and not just the numbers? Yeah, you have to, right? You have to we have biometric information that we take when we play poker. We can see the faces of our opponents. We can see them sweat. We can see their tells. Well, if the AI is going to be able to play on the same footing as us, then they need that same information as well. They need to have a camera, and you're going to have to allow them to play with that extra information. And once they do, they can win that game too. They can recognize the tells better than we could have recognized the tells, at least consciously recognize those tells and those cues.
Very exciting. They're gonna play. They're gonna take this AI to Valve's international invitational later this month, where they will play the actual winners of that match.
Wow.
So we'll see them play some actual current champions.
Yeah, and this is funded partly by Elon Musk and his AI initiative. Alrighty. AI is going to be an increasingly important part of self-driving cars as well. And one report comes about the future of Tesla's cars is that they may be developing their own chips, processing chips.
For what?
For the computer vision.
Interesting.
And this is not an easy thing to do, in a couple of different ways you can approach it, right? If you have, right now, I think you have CPUs, GPUs, or you can have very specific focused processing chips where they're very good at one thing, but not good at general processing.
Like ASIC chips.
ASIC chips,
Yeah.
exactly. And the theory is that Tesla is developing something more like an ASIC chip that's optimized for computer vision, but it means that you can't refine your approach you can't change your approach. You can't pivot your approach to computer vision. What you've set this chip to do, it's going to do that thing really well, and you have to be confident that this is the way you're going to solve the computer vision self-driving car problem.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it could be cheaper for them, it could be more efficient for them, and it could give them a leg up as opposed to piggybacking off of aftermarket or just chips made by Intel or NVIDIA or AMD.
For more generalized purposes.
And NVIDIA is developing has its own kind of like programmable chip that's made, maybe not an ASIC chip just for computer vision, but it's optimized for computer vision, somewhere in between.
So not a graphics chip.
Not a graphics chip, exactly. Made for self-driving cars. I think they announced a couple generations of those.
They've been working on that kind of technology for years now.
Yeah.
Like computer vision for self-driving cars.
And banking on big car companies adopting those chips.
Yeah.
And maybe might not be Tesla, but in 5 years, we expect a lot more electric vehicles to want to, and car companies to want to have self-driving capabilities, and to maybe adopt those chips.
So do you think, Tesla sells their batteries? Do you think that they would want to sell these ASIC chips?
I don't think they would. I think that is such. I think their value. I think the value in their company isn't just the battery technology, because that's. If they have innovations in there, great. And if they're going to sell it, because they need to have the Gigafactory keep on pumping those things out, but their competitive advantage is going to be in the technology, in the UI, in the way the car interfaces with the drive system, and also with the autonomous driving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the that's what makes the car feel more like a piece of technology than a car, more so than the electric aspect of it. Because your car, even though it's an electric car, it still feels like a car, right?
Yeah.
The UI and everything.
By design.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing that my parents have the most problem with right now, isn't the driving aspect. It's the interface. It's the technology aspect. It's the self-driving. It's all the sensors. It's the, it's all that aspect. This is breaking stuff right now as we're recording. Tesla stock has been halted for trading.
What's going on? Was there some leak on
Elon
some news?
Tweeted that he might be taking the company private.
Oh, you mentioned that earlier, and that tanked the stock?
No, he said it would if the stock went up. His tweet was, if the stock goes up to $420, and I think as he tweeted it, it was at like $340. So a huge percentage jump. Because if it goes up to $420, he will take it private, and he has the private investors ready to come in.
Is that a pot joke?
I don't know. I didn't even think of it that way.
Okay.
The stock jumped up 7% after that.
Wow. This morning. Okay.
And people are saying that this either is going to be true. He either it's a huge coup for Tesla, and he has investors lined up, and it's going to happen. He's going to sell the company, or it's going to go private, and or this is basically fraud and manipulation, and the SEC is going to come down hard on him.
Yikes. So wait. But even if he had the investors lined up, could it still be considered fraud, or not fraud, but manipulation?
No.
Really?
I think that
it could, depending on intent. Like, there could be an investigation.
There will probably be an investigation. He's doubling down on it. It's not a joke. He's like tweeted follow-ups about how people will be able to keep their shares, and
Okay.
Oh.
Because active manipulation of markets like that has ripple effects on other things. So it's not just what's happening to the Tesla stock that the SEC is concerned about.
That is some crazy, crazy stuff.
Any word
Real
on when
world of social media.
Any word on when it will be released by the NASDAQ or whoever's in charge?
No.
They usually don't halt for more than a day.
Yeah.
So probably by tomorrow it'll be
happening
nice.
right now. And I think that does it for technology news. Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue with this week's episode, I want to thank the sponsor that's bringing you this episode, and that is Emma. Here is some advice for anyone that sends emails to their customers. You deserve a better email marketing platform, one that's actually designed with your type of organization in mind. And unlike other email providers, Emma puts its customers first, offering powerful email marketing with a personal touch. With Emma, you have everything you need to connect your data, build your audience, and do your most successful marketing ever. Because their easy-to-use platform makes advanced functionality accessible to everyone on your team. No technical skills required. You can even connect Emma with the services you count on to run your business, like Salesforce and Google Analytics. Not to mention, Emma's award-winning team is always ready to support you on your email marketing strategy, design, list migration, and more. So put the power of email experts behind your marketing. Request a customized demo of Emma's email marketing platform today at myemma.com. Again, that's MYEMMA, myemma.com. And thank them for sponsoring this week's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
What are we doing next? I always forget. Oh, yeah.
a moment of science.
New NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine rolled out the red carpet, and he announced 9 new astronauts for upcoming programs. Now, these are astronauts that will be on commercial flights, commercial or private company-based flights. There's 2 companies. Boeing has their Berliner, is that what it's called? I think. And SpaceX has its Dragon capsule. Now, these weren't shocking announcements. They kind of trotted out the astronauts. These aren't shocking announcements because most of the astronauts have been working with these private companies on the design of these capsules for years before and had been working with crews in the testing leading up to this. So this wasn't like some sort of massive unveil, but it was still great to see the astronauts on stage, because part of what the announcement was really about was saying, hey, this is going to be a real thing. We're going to be launching the Dragon capsule, I think in late 2019 is the current target, and the Boeing one is soon thereafter. So
this is a big deal, though, because this is the using U.S. companies, SpaceX and Boeing, to take our astronauts up to ISS as opposed to paying Russia to do it. And these are experimental new capsules.
Yeah, and
this isn't Soyuz.
The Dragon capsule is going. We've seen some plans out of SpaceX that the Dragon is part of for creating more and more different capsules that'll get us to Mars. It's like in a beginning stage. It's not clear exactly where Boeing is going with all of their development into long term. There's some indication that this is part of a play for a commercial flight to suborbit, even though this is going to the ISS, because Boeing's interested in that. Boeing is a main contractor on the ISS doing the maintenance, so they have a really direct reason to be developing their own capsules. I'm just excited just to see. I mean, I thought it was just cool to see astronauts announced. It harkened back to the 60s.
Now, not all of these are new astronauts.
No.
Many of these are returning astronauts who've either been on ISS or been on their missions. Sunita Williams, for example.
She was, I think, commander of the ISS for a year.
Do you think NASA takes into account the media savvy of these astronauts for PR? Because NASA had a huge success with, not NASA, Canadian Space Agency, had huge success with Chris Hadfield and the awareness he brought of space travel.
I would say
the mission of ISS.
Leland Melvin has also been a big success for them.
The next generation of astronauts, or these new crews that are being announced, do you think they're looking to who will be the next great space science communicator?
Sort of. Yes, from talking to some former astronauts, I think yes, but it's not it's so far down the list. Because they have, I think NASA still looks at this as we have a mission to accomplish. We need to think about who's best suited for that mission, and maybe this is 150th down on that list, because they do want their personality to emerge, and they do give them opportunities to do that. But who breaks through is a bit of an unknown, from what I understand. So they'll put people in interesting situations, guys like Mike Massimino has a really big personality, but he hasn't broken through in the same way that Chris did, and Chris is kind of a more understated guy. So I would think from the outset you would look at Mike, this guy with this big Boston accent, really approachable, and be oh, that guy is going to be a social star.
You can't calculate that.
Yeah, so there's a little unknown here. So I'm sure they've done some thinking about that. But who is actually going to break out? I don't know. And now that we have companies like SpaceX involved, who clearly put a ton of money into their webcast and their launches and the production around all of that, that has a bigger factor here as well. Because SpaceX is going to be yeah, definitely send a tweet from space. And Elon's going to retweet it right away. Whatever, right. Something like that's going to happen.
It takes a certain amount of savvy from the leadership to have that a priority, because it's not something that is clearly going to pay dividends, but it does.
It does so much, and so it's
it has
kind
blowback.
Of what we need.
It has blowback too. I think the Tesla in space, while it was cool, also got a lot of flack and negative attention.
But you can't calculate the value of what what Chris Hadfield did for space education and inspiring people to pursue careers in science.
I thought you were going to say you can't calculate the value of an alien race coming across a Tesla and be like, I need one of those Model 3s. We should talk about the SpaceX launch last night. They launched a new satellite. It was an Indonesian telecommunications satellite. But what was really amazing about it, I mean, first of all space launches are cool. They landed the booster again on, of course, I Still Love You, the barge out in the Atlantic. This was the second time they've launched that particular booster.
Love it.
On the thing. And it's supposed to go out for a third time later this year. So now we're starting to, something we talked about a year ago about reusing rocket boosters. Now it's just becoming like a thing. It's passe. So I think that is incredibly exciting. I watch every SpaceX launch I can. It's still like deeply enjoyable to watch every single one.
They're well produced too. They make it fun.
And just hearing the crowd like kind of roar and be excited.
Who is that crowd? Are they
SpaceX employees?
That's awesome that they are that excited there.
It would be one hilarious like scandal if they were like bringing in outside people to cheer, like hiring people off the street, being
little
like
applause
seat
lights.
fillers.
All right, just two more quick stories this week. Jerry put this story in of a study that emerged in PLOS One that was sort of like this is sort of the it was studying robot behavior, but how our behavior is affected when we interact with robots. And what's interesting about it is I think it tells you a secret about most scientific studies.
Oh, interesting.
Is that they lie to you
Yes.
up front when you're in them.
The study was ostensibly about seeing whether or not robots would be helpful to performing certain tasks. So they had people come in. I think they had almost. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. It should be on Do Not Disturb. They had robots sit there with people, and they would complete to-do lists. And then they, just this was a useless thing that was a red herring to make them feel like this is why they were in the room with the robot. And then at the end of this quote-unquote experiment, the scientists would ask the participant to turn the robot off. And the robot, in half of the cases, to do a proper double-blind, the robot would protest.
And protest is like a mild word, like beg not to be turned off in some cases.
Yeah. And then if they would go towards turning it off, the robot would more emphatically say, no, please don't turn me off. Please don't.
But this is all remote controlled.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pre-programmed, but there's like certain conditions. So there's one that was like, what it said was decided ahead of time. What's hilarious to me about this is that this is straight out of season 1 of The Good Place. So there's a point where Janet, the AI in that show, basically is like, you have to hit this red button to reboot me. But I will warn you, I have a safeguard in my system where as you get closer to the button, I will beg for my life.
Wow.
And they did this like series of improvs, and it was amazing because it does like poke at this thing is that when people protest or when we hear these protests, especially when we perceive them to be authentic emotionally, it is very hard to overcome.
So what happened was almost a third of the participants refused to turn off the robot.
Of course.
Absolutely refused.
Did the robot have eyes?
The scientists said, no, please turn it off. And they refused to do it. Almost everyone else took twice as long to turn it off.
Wow.
The robot did have eyes.
That's important.
I like that study a lot. And lastly, one of my favorite little studies that's come out is there's a big effort to restore wetlands throughout this country. And there's certain areas that have had this problem of when they've planted seeds for grasses to restore these wetlands, mice will come along and eat those seeds. So how can we stop these mice from just eating the seeds? Well, researchers found the best thing to do is to take capsaicin derived from the ghost pepper and coat them on the seeds. Mice can't handle the spice.
And that won't affect the growth of the foliage.
Spicy grass is still wetland grass, man.
All right.
I just like how the mice can't handle the spice.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
All right. Let's talk about Bridge Crew a little bit. We're going to talk about this a lot more on projections this week, but the three of us have been playing Star Trek Bridge Crew again.
Why?
Because of the new release of the Next Generation.
DLC.
$15. Yeah, it's been out for PSVR for a little bit and finally out for Rift and Vive. These are new ongoing missions, standalone missions, which puts you on the bridge of the Enterprise 1701D as Captain, Tactical, Ops, or Navigation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They've refined operations. So if you're familiar with the old game, it's now a little bit more complicated operations. There's a couple different screens. There's a kind of a light FTL style, moving your crew around the ship in order to conduct repairs.
The thing I like about Bridge Crew, this is what I've wanted from a Star Trek MMO in a long time. When Star Trek Online was announced, like I've wanted multi-people in a room controlling different playing mini games essentially to work on a ship. And they capture that, but it still doesn't feel like anything you do is really effectual.
What do you mean?
I mean, like it just feels like the Borg mission's the closest we've gotten because it's a tough mission, but every other mission's been really easy. And if you leave the ops role to just auto micromanage, like the micromanagement doesn't really feel like it pays dividends.
Well, it's possible we're also very good.
No, come on.
One of the things I also am a little disappointed by, and there's a lot of things I like, but I'm going to name some of my gripes first, is that it is a cross-platform game, and so the hand presence is lowest common denominator. They don't have all the hand presence, all the gestures you could do with the touch controller or even the Steam VR controller, because they also have to make it work for the PSVR wands. Mm-hmm. And so I want to do all these gestures, and a lot of it's interactivity. Like when we're playing the game, we are communicating through audio, and that's one of the huge successes of this game, where we're just mostly verbal.
In fact,
audio
it won't let you play unless your mic works. You have to do a mic check as part of a gateway to joining a match.
Whereas audio communication was important on something like Rec Room, but in Rec Room, I felt our bodies more there. I was where you were pointing, where you were running. Yeah. And we're on the bridge of a ship, but I'm not really looking at you and doing that. That's it's fun, but it's not essential. And I feel like if they did more to encourage the kind of embodiment and being present on the bridge as opposed to just looking at your station
or even the ship. I mean, I would like to be able to move around the ship. I mean,
that's a whole different game.
Maybe so, but I would love it. I mean,
like that teleport. So you're one of the crew, and you have to get beamed to engineering.
Yeah, maybe there's a whole deck that gets knocked out by the Borg, and I have to go down there and seal it off or something like that, or go to the holodeck.
Oh, okay. Maybe not even like being able to physically be at the different parts of the ship, but like the fact that the whole stuff is just a number, right? In Star Trek, I care when it's the deflector array is damaged, and hull 5 to decks 5 to 18 are inoperable. Like that shouldn't matter. Here is just I have 1% hull. That's still good enough. My ship still works.
It's not.
Works great.
It's not good enough. You're on fire.
I do feel like they don't use the view screen in the way it could. Like, we should get more messages from the people we're battling or people we're communicating with visually through that, and that doesn't feel like it would change the nature of the game at all.
Or even engaging in the combat, right?
Yeah.
The view screen is useful when we want to orient the ship for warp and impulse, but we're not really looking at the view screen either.
The other thing that I wish they did in the Borg sequence is if you think about Best of Both Worlds, like there's that part where the Borg cube disables the ship, and you have to repair your ship to catch up. And we have a lot of situations where nav is important, tactical is important, command is important, ops is important to repair things that have been damaged in battle, but never an ops-driven narrative. And I feel like that's the missed thing, is like not all stations are equal. Even though they're all necessary to work together, there needs to be like more on that ops table.
There's also the question of how useful is the captain once you're replaying a mission so many times, because everyone pretty much knows their role, and the missions follow the same beats.
Well, that's why when we're playing just the three of us, we don't play with 4 people. The captain always plays ops, because it can just double. And the captain does get more information than everyone else,
Right.
Because you get all the mission objectives and you get all the details of the local area. But the captain really, if you know the role, if you know the mission, you don't need someone in that seat barking orders.
Ensign, that's a good way to get court-martialed.
Chain of command.
It is
Chain of command,
It
sir.
is funny. It's funny that the game lends itself so much to light role playing,
Yeah.
because you almost feel like that is the most efficient way to play it.
And that's the most fun we've had.
Yeah.
Like, is the light role playing. Did you guys ever play that game Starfleet Command and Starfleet Command 2? Interplay made this. Those are essentially like submarine games, simulations, and where you're third person, I think, isometric view of your starship, and it was a simulation. There were so many aspects of the micromanagement you have to do, from sending shuttlecraft out to having more crew on to redistributing power to where the shield, something I wish the bridge crew had was just directionality of the shield, right? If ops could, or tactical could redirect energy, if you had of the shield to forward or aft, right? We're not talking about 3D chess here. We're talking about 2D chess. Right now, the only thing that matters is direction of your photon torpedoes and a little bit of the phasers. I don't even need to split the saucer and saucer section and the engine section. But yeah, just having that, just feeling like it's more than just one bar of energy that you're using.
It'd be interesting to see a pro mode, where it was really Star Trek.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of details, and it wasn't easy to get through even the missions we do pretty simply.
And maybe it's stepping stones. Maybe this is slow iteration toward that thing.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is that it feels like just a limited release. They had the money to do the original Bridge Crew, to do DLC. I don't know if Ubisoft has any plans to expand further. But if it was an MMO, if it was even like whatchamacallit, that other space sim on Rift.
Elite
Dangerous.
Yeah.
It feels like Elite Dangerous, where they can, there's a existing player base that can pay, they can get a revenue model for buying new skins and getting, the slow upgrade to the capital ship. And Elite Dangerous has evolved over time to have multi-crew ships and away missions and all that stuff. Like, I want the TNG skinned Elite Dangerous.
They don't have the scripted drama that Bridge Crew has.
Yeah, and that's not easy to do. Those random missions.
There are simple things. I mean, it might be expensive, but if they got voice actors from the cast, like, that would just make this umpteen more immersive.
I bet that development crew has a whiteboard full of great ideas. They just don't have the budget.
Yeah, it's about what type of experience you want to have, and for someone who may not be. I think the people buying this game are into Star Trek, but they may not be necessarily very fluent in VR, and so you do have to make it simpler in that respect. Yeah.
The other game we've been playing, or at least Norm and I have you tried it? Pixel Ripped 1989. It came out last week. There was a little bit of a push behind it on the stores, that you'd see some advertisements. This is coming.
I had no idea this is coming out, and then you sent me a message.
I said this is a special game, and if you haven't played it yet, and you have a Rift or Vive, or PlayStation VR, it's out on that too. I highly recommend it. It's $20, or at least it was last week, and it's worth it. It's 4 levels, and it breaks some new ground. It does some really interesting things. It's not just a first-person pixelated world. It does more than that.
I think this game does Ready Player One better than Ready Player One.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it really mixes and mashes some of your preconceptions, and it has this indie spirit that you can feel. It's great.
It's not. It doesn't feel cheap.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great production.
4
value.
years they spent on this game.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I love this game. We'll be showing a lot more and talking a lot more of that on projections as well. Any other bits of VR news? I know we're all playing through Hellblade. The port.
I don't know if I'm going to play through that. It's like the intro is too scary.
It is a scary, scary game, but you got to play it.
Really?
You got to play it. It's made. It feels like a game that wasn't made for VR, but it's so perfect for VR.
But it's a gamepad game. There's not even tracked controllers.
I play with
That's okay.
I play with the touch controllers.
Yeah, but they're not tracked, right?
Yeah,
You can't.
Yeah, I don't need it to be
That's
tracked.
fascinating that
Yeah.
you like a game that's only really about the
Well,
headset.
also, in going back to Pixel Rift, that's a game where track controllers is super helpful, and you can play with the gamepad, but it's a game where PSVR has a leg up.
You can play with the gamepad?
Yeah, you can have it's not tracked.
How do you aim the
I guess-
virtual gamepad?
I guess you can't play with the gamepad.
Okay.
But it's a game. I'm sorry. It's a game where PSVR, the tracked DualShock controller,
Yeah.
is actually an advantage.
Yes.
Over
yeah.
over just individually tracked hand controllers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. But again, we'll be talking more about it in projections. I think that does it for this week's episode of This Is Only a Test. We have an outro.
We do. From Justin. This is 10-month-old. I don't think we played it, but we probably have.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Processing. 27-year-old man with black hair wearing glasses looking neutral.
That's my new Twitter bio.
Tested.